Hey, peace. Uhuru to the family. Welcome to another We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I am Ikemba, host of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club, here with my co-host. Let the folks know.
Peace, everyone. This is Frank, host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series, as part of WCC every Sunday at 1 p.m.
Indeed. And so we are two of three co-hosts of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. Our sister Natasha won't be joining us this morning. Who knows though? She might pop in. We'll see what happens. But we're going to continue our reading of the important, I think is an important text, Africa and global politics. We've been like really discussing global politics in the 21st century, but we've been focusing on, I think, like the last month or so on the relationship between Nigeria and South Africa, really going into that history, just giving some context and where they are now. So we're going to continue from chapter 2 of that text, Nigeria and South Africa in the Global Forum, and that book can be found in our Google Drive. Everyone has access to our Google Drive, and I will share the link at some point in the chat so you guys can along with us when we get into the book, which will be the half of our podcast club, because usually we start off with our weekly roundup and what's going on as it pertains to the African experience around the world. We think it's important that we control our narrative, and We Charge Colonialism is all about that, giving you our experience from an African revolutionary freedom fighting perspective. Oh, might need some water, man. But so yeah, getting into our weekly roundup, I think one of the important stories right now to talk about is what is taking place with the Uhuru 3 in their trial, which has just come to a close. And I'm just going to share an article, and I'll share the link in the chat as well. Burning Spear, you can go to Burning Spear though, burningspear.com, theburningspear.com, to gain access to this article as well. But let me share that link, and I'm just going to share my screen. What's going on here? All right, because the Who 3, the chairman, Malia Shatella, who is the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Jesse Neville and Penny Hess, who are leaders of the African People's Solidarity movement, were on trial. They were alleged to be agents of the Russian government. And here we go right here. So the Uhuru 3 was found not guilty of being Russian agents, which we knew all along. When you get into the article and some of the coverage of the Uhuru 3 case, for the most part, the state's evidence was weak, or they just lacked the evidence. As far as the Uhuru 3 being agents of the Russian government, everybody knew that these were faulty charges. Anybody who is familiar with our movement for liberation, this liberation movement, and even the struggle for just basic rights within the United States, those who led the charge to secure our rights and our liberation were always described, or are always deemed to be agents for a foreign power. And that foreign power was usually the Soviet Union, or Russia, which was formerly the Soviet Union. And this has a lot to do with their history between the communist Russia or Soviet Union and the capitalist imperialist empire of the United States, right? So ideological differences and struggle for world dominance And so, this was a way to undermine our movement, and historically and even today. And so this was used as a pretext to raid the offices of the African People's Socialist Party, and to put the leaders of the Uhuru movement on trial. uh, Again, this was, for me, this was all about trying to, of course, undermine the movement and destroy the movement, try to eliminate it like it did so many of our movements in the 60s and the 70s. Um, but it also was to put our strategy of resisting colonialism and capitalism on trial as well. Who we can ally with and what we can do to liberate ourselves. People should have the freedom to liberate themselves and struggle for sovereignty. And so it's always been, for me, and I'll give it to you, Frank, to see if you have any thoughts. But for me, it's always been the relationship between those who are quote unquote masters, talking about this master slave relationship, or colonizers, them having the power to define our struggle, overall our actions we're able to do as African people. And so anytime our actions, our behaviors went outside the limits of what the European deemed as legal or right behavior, that we will be criminalized in a sense. So our actions to resist colonialism, to resist our slavery, has always been made illegal. It we've always been criminalized for resisting against systems of oppression and exploitation. And so that's nothing new to today. After slavery, and when we had Jim Crow, had to go through the Jim Crow era, and had to deal with black codes, which evolved into Jim Crow segregation. That was another way to restrict what we can do, our behavior, right? So the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, was all about uh, this right, struggling for basic civil rights and human rights and the right to self-determination. And many of the organizations that struggle for this, again, was deemed to be working for the Soviet Union. We were agents of some outside power because we didn't know any better, right? Or our situation wasn't that bad that we should be fighting for these basic rights, such as the right to free speech, the right to vote given in the Constitution, or even just the right to organize for self-determination. These things was deemed illegal. So I'll give it to you, Frank, if you have any thoughts. But just the last thing, they were found uh, not of being Russian, but they were found guilty of conspiring, guilty of conspiracy, whatever that means. But yeah, but go ahead, Frank, if you have.
First of all, it's a good news. Firstly, we just want to say thanks to the team that are behind this whole Huru 3 movement, and thanks to the courageous men and women, and to all the team. All right. Um, it's very laughable, especially judging from a historical perspective, with the West. And you know what they do. This is how systematically they have always gone against uh, people in society who they feel a threat to them. People in society who they feel are exposing them, or so forth and things, and people who are just refused, to be obedient to them or to bow down to them. This is how systematically they have gone against them. Does it really make sense to be an informant for Russia, a nation that is very sophisticated as well, just like the United States, that they can get any information they want? These are people who are equipped. I mean, what does the black man, let's make this clear, what does the black man have to give to Russia? What does Russia have to give to the black man? Everywhere the blacks are, they are fighting for survival. They are fighting to strive. They are fighting for their dignity. What Russia really wants from a black man, do the United States think a black man will go against her in favor of Russia? Why would they think that way? You see, this is the failure of a system, all right? A systematic system that refused to give the right, the humanitarian right to a people who have defended a nation, to a people who have defended a system, to a people who have defended a place. That's what happened if you fail to recognize such people. That's what happened if you fail to give such people what belongs to them, what they deserve. And at the end of the day, if they say no to your belief, if they say no to your belief, your attitude, your behavior, then you see them as an enemy to your enemy. You see them as an enemy like how you see your enemy, only because they disagreed with you. Now, the reason why they will always come against people of such, right? It is because the same thing, for example, the Russians are fighting for. It is the same thing, the same dignity the Russians are fighting for. Even not the Russian, the same dignity other nations, let's forget about Russia now. The same dignity other nations, other people are fighting for. It is the same dignity, okay? Black in this country, African people in this country are fighting for. Now, if people outside of this nation are fighting for the same thing people inside of this nation are fighting for, what will come to the colonizer or the imperialist is these people are working with these people outside of this country. And that means we are a threat because they will get information from people outside of this country. And that's how the United States went against the Huru Three, because the same dignity people outside of this country are fighting for, and the same people they are fighting against, it is the same people. People within are fighting the same thing, the same freedom, the same dignity. Okay? They say, leave me alone and let me do our things. That's the same thing. So in that line, you will see it as a threat. And this is what exactly that went on. For example, look at this guy, the Scott, how they call it, Scott, a United States retired veteran. The last time I saw him on a Huru 3, how they call it, podcast, and it was asking him the same thing. And this is, and as I was Scott in one of his interviews, he said, why would I want to sell the United States for Russia? A nation that I have fought for, a nation that I have gave my life for, and I can give my life again for this nation. So why would I want to be an informer? Why would I want to go against the US for Russia? What have Russia done for me? A nation that I have laid my life for, I have sacrificed for, a nation that I have led truth, and I have seen truth, my truth, some of them being killed, some of them barely came back home in coffin. This is the nation that I would betray. And they went to his home. They invaded his home, just like the Huru 3. They took everything that they feared, that they wanted to take. They took it. Why? Just because he's standing for the truth. Just because he's against the war in Ukraine. Just because he is speaking out that, listen, it is the US that is fighting Russia. It is NATO that is fighting Russia. It is not Ukraine. To the extent, in one of his interviews, he said the CIA agent that went to his house, to raid his house, they asked him a question. Why are you on the side of Russia and not on the side of the US? And that's how he began to explain himself. Why would I be on the side of Russia? Does it make sense? Do I live in Russia? Did I give my life for Russia? Am I a veteran for Russia or I'm a veteran for the US? Just because I'm speaking the truth, just because I have awakened, just because I do not want to support another war for another Americans to go and die, just because I have waken up that we were lied to about other nations, that we went there as a troop to go and fight, just because I have waken up and I'm speaking out about the truth for Americans not to support this plain war for them to go and die, because you will die if you fight Russia. And I do not want it to happen. I do not want for Americans to die. And then you saying I'm against the US when I'm fighting to preserve American life, because you will die. When I'm breaking out the truth because Russia does not want to fight. When I'm telling American people that Russia is not the problem, it is NATO, it is US, how they call it, lawmakers who are the problem. And then you say against the US, I'm for Russia. And today he's in court, just like the Huru 3. So that's the kind of society, that's the kind of system we are dealing with. A toxic system that they feel they should always be there to give the narrative, to feed people the lies. And at the end of the day, you go and fight their war while their children are sitting home to enjoy the proceed of that war. And that is what Scott said. He will not be part, and he will not allow another American to be part of such veteran. It's better you leave people alone. It's better the war stay at peace than to run propaganda. And that's the only reason they want to invade him, because he's telling the truth. He's bringing out the truth. Imagine on his way to Russia and to the airport, they seize his passport, everything. And today they still have his passport. He cannot travel because they have taken him to court. That's how they bring limitation to it. And one of the poker, he said, he still communicate with people on the ground, journalists, renowned journalists who actually want the truth, who are actually seeking the truth and bringing the truth and educating people. So regardless what, even though he's not there, but he's still updating the American public and even the world about what is going on in Ukraine versus what mainstream media bring to you. But again, you know, this is a win to the revolutionary, and this is a lose to the imperialists, and this is how they are going to go down. Because if you start going against people who feel that they are part of this nation, what are you doing? Are they going to fight? They will not fight. If you start imprisoning people wrongfully, if you start carrying people to court wrongfully, do you think they are going? Is that the more you do that, the more you awaken people, and that is why. That is why now they are forcing people to go and join the military. That is why they are forcing people to be a felony if you don't go and sign up for the reserve, the how they call that stuff that they just put on, where you have to go and sign up for it to be on a reserve and thing. If not, you'll be a felony. All right, the selective service. That is why now they make the selective service a felony from how they call it 17 to 25 or 26. If you don't go and sign up for the selective service, automatically you become a felony. Why would they do that? Because they have seen that Black are waking up and Black are saying we are not going to join this army because of what we are going through, because of the kind of propaganda the United States government or Congress are putting on us, because of how they are invading or how they are judging us. That is why the military is poor, and they are forcing people to go and join the military. Selective service is not a crime if you don't apply for it or if you don't sign up for it. And these are the things that is making them to lose, because you cannot keep hitting the same people who at the end you will run to fight for you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, what's the point of even having a selective service if it's going to be mandatory? It just write it into law, you know. Now because I don't check a box, I'm a criminal, you know. Just write it into law if you're going to make it mandatory. But but the point I'm even at, not saying that it's right, uh, but again, this is the way that the ruling class is able to criminalize people, and they've been doing it. Very tricky, man. Very tricky people, manipulative, deceptive, um, and this, you know, for me, this whole illusion that the ruling class created with the help of the state to really blind us to what is really happening. And so there's so many, you know, distractions that have been created. And you know, and that's just like, this is my message to the people, and you know, in the conversations I think we have to have more, is to like really evaluate how we spending our time as a people that are colonized, as a people that are at war. Do people who are at war, do they have the luxury to do a lot of the things that I see us doing, you know, as black folks, man? And you know, entertainment is, I think, a great example. You know, how much entertainment we consume, which is nothing more than a distraction on what's really a distraction from the issues that we should be solving, as black people. And those people who we're supporting as entertainers, is not as if they are overwhelmingly using their resources to advance the cause of black people. If anything, is to continue to maintain the system of colonial capitalism. So these are the conversations we have to have, and we have to, you know, continue to evaluate that. So I know that's a little digression. There's some things that you said that made me think about that, though. But yeah, this is the Uhuru 3 trial. Uh, you know, victory. But again, this was sort of a distraction as well. This whole trial, the FBI raids offices, bring the Uhuru movement, put the Uhuru movement on trial as agents of Russia, and don't have the evidence, or the evidence that they do have is weak. You go to court like that, the FBI, come on, let's be serious, you know. So it's bigger than that, it's deeper than that. But I know we spent a lot of time on that, as we should. But let's, if we can just go to this other story real quick. This is about the competition over African resources, this continuing scramble for Africa. The scramble for Africa, I think, never stopped. It just changed, transformed. Right, there might have been a little hiatus to regroup to see how Africa will be exploited with these newly independent, quote unquote, independent nations. But the scramble from Africa just looks a lot different than it did when Europe had a monopoly. Western Europe had a monopoly over Africa. So just going to go to this article: the UAE competing with China. Here we go. Do I got it on screen? No. What's going on? Reshare. But yes, the UAE is competing with China, and oh man. Oh, here you go. I lost it. So gotta accept that. Something's going on. Okay, here we go. So how the UAE is competing with China for Africa's resources with more than 97 billion pledged. The UAE's economic strategy is up against China's ambitions, while the US and EU also seeking, like, right. Listen, all of these outside actors, right, seeking influence and control. They didn't even mention Russia here, right? Russia's over Africa. I think Russia's involved in 30 something African countries. right? So there's this competition, foreign competition over influences over African nations, access to the control over their resources. It's as simple as that. And I'm just going to read a little bit of this article, and then we can discuss it. Middle Eastern commercial powerhouse, the United Arab Emirates, is fast emerging as China's most formidable competitor in Africa by harnessing its financial resources, economy first diplomacy, and world class logistical networks. The UAE looks poised to capitalize on opportunities largely created by decades of Chinese investment on the continent, having overtaken both China and Western nations as Africa's largest foreign direct investor. The UAE, over the last, I think, 5 years, has invested more uh, capital than any other nation, right? This small, newly formed, country, committing more than 97 billion in 22 and 2023. He is strategically positioned to compete with and collaborate alongside Beijing, as well as its Western and Asian adversaries, analysts say. I'm gonna just stop there for the sake of time, because we're going to shortly transition to the book. But the UAE, just so we know how important that we keep an eye on this, and we have to find ways to resist this as well. The UAE has purchased 1/5 of Zimbabwe's land. That's close to 20% of Zimbabwe's land. I think last year uh, they struck a deal with Liberia to purchase 1/10 of Liberia's land, right? And same thing is happening in places like Kenya and Congo, as far as the UAE. And the UAE is funding one side of the conflict that that's happening in Sudan. So the UAE is involved, is tremendously involved in politics, economy, and we have to keep an eye on this. And like, this is that new form of colonialism, but it happens, through neo-colonialist puppets, African leaders who allow this. How does an African leader allow 1/5 of your land to come under the control of a foreign power? So this is capitalism. This is the history. This is how capitalism and colonialism are partners. Capitalism is the system that maintains colonialism. This is how colonialism is able to thrive and maintain its dominance over people, is through an economic system, capitalism. And from the early development of capitalism, what the West would do, these Europeans would just annex your land by force, right? Or if they go into contract with you with some sort of treaty, uh, it will be an offer you can't refuse. And if you refuse the offer, then there will be a war fought, and they will seize that land. That was the of capitalism. That's how Europe was able to expand around the world and access and control to the globe, to lands outside of Europe. Today, it's a lot different, where now you have people in blackface who are able to sit down at the table. Remember Berlin Conference, there were no Africans sitting at that table, but now the Africans are at the table, facilitating this new colonialism that's taking place all throughout Africa. So for the sake of time, I'll stop, but this is something that we'll continue to talk about. But go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, you talk about, let me dive into it, like, especially for Liberia, where you're talking about the UAE was trying to, how do you call it, buy or purchase or get influence in huge of land in Liberia. And the reality here is, right, let's be frank here. Africa is doing nothing to save herself, or the African leaders, they are doing nothing to save themselves, right? The reality here is the Western war, the outside war, are actually fighting over Africa. And let me just go back to Liberia again. When you see during the past 6 years, the West, or the United States to be specifically, was not in agreement with the George Weah-led administration, it was because of this. Because this was a leader that was not being obedient to the US, that was not listening to, or that was not paying attention to so-called US investors. So-called, the reason why I say so-called, because the US have been in Liberia since 1847 or 1822. They did not do anything as compared to human development. All right. Now, or infrastructure development, nothing. Both human development, infrastructure development, the US did nothing. What they did that, if they did any infrastructure development, was because of infrastructure that they benefited from in order to get the resources, or in order for their people while their people are dead. But in terms of holistically for the nation, both human and capital, the US did nothing. Now, so they went against the government that was there, weird government, because they feared that this was a government that used his OSA influence, all right, his OSA connection, because time to time, the United States have always supported leader in Liberia. I'm going to narrow it down to Liberia. Leader in Liberia who does not have OSA influence, who does not have OSA connection other than the US. So in that perspective, if the US says no to you, you cannot go to anyone because you have no influence or tie with other people. And that's how the US have been able to strangle this little tiny nation, so rich, from developing, because she have had all says, okay, within that nation as a whole, or even the government as a whole. Now, because of how the war is going, and the reality here is World War III is coming. I mean, it's already going on, right? And Liberia is very vital to the United States, just how Liberia was vital to the United States World War II. Because that was the nation that she was using as a base. That's why today, you have that Rabat International Airport. It was not put there because of good faith, that they love Liberia, they want to see good for Liberia. It was put there because they used it to fight World War II. That Rabat International Airport. That's why they name it Rabat International Airport. Why did they name it after a black person, or after some kind of name of Liberia? But they name it RIA. Why did they do that? Because the first president was a good man? No, the first president was the third governor in the first place. Joseph Jenkins Rabo, he was the third governor after Thomas Buchanan. After Judy Ashman, Thomas Buchanan, and Thomas Buchanan, Joseph Jenkins Rabo, before he became president, he was the third governor. Who made him a governor? The United States. Who made him the president? The United States. Then, if the United States made him the president, now I'm just going to history a little bit because I'm kind of deviating because I want for people to understand. If he was the governor and the US made him the governor, the third governor, then he became the president. Then who made him the president? What did he fight for? Did he fight for freedom like how other nations fight for freedom? Now, again, this go to, again, the so-called lies about the 1884, or how they call it, 1847 independence of Liberia. It's lies. It's fake. Because this man did not fight for independence. This man was the governor appointed by the US. Then what did he fight for to gain independence? And then that even go to the flag. What was the flag for? No, it was given again. That go to the Constitution again, the 1887 Constitution. I mean, that just all go there. All right. So the Liberia as a nation was founded as a colony, as the territory, which is still today a territory. All right. So again, let's go back to the point. The point here is these nations are fighting over Africa. Now, they removed this government because they feared that this government was using its OSA influence and not using the US influence. That is not to say, again, we are talking in favor of the nation or the UAE that he was trying to do business with. But the point here is we want for Liberian or Africans, all right, to see the reality of what is going on. Now, they removed this man. The U.S. put a puppet government like Joseph Boakai came in. Now, right, what did he do as we speak? Because the U.S. still need Liberia by if World War III is to continue, because the point here, World War III is there already. But if World War III is to continue or escalate, Liberia will still be used again, just like World War II. Now, because the U.S. lack resources, all right? So the U.S. want to use Liberia to gain her momentum back, because Liberia is still one of the nations in the world that have iron ore, and they are there. And not just iron ore, Liberia have uranium. They are there. So as we speak, this current government, Boakai, have given the St. John River money iron ore back to the U.S. frame. Back to the U.S. frame. And as I read it, there is nothing in the agreement for Liberia. There is nothing in the agreement to benefit Liberia. It's all about how this frame have a lesson. And then, in fact, you know what it did? One of their own nuclear power plant in the U.S. that have been shut down for centuries, they are about to open it, a nuclear power plant, because they have seen, again, other nations like Russia, China, all right, Iran. These nations, if they are to go to World War III, Russia is not going to stand alone. China is going to go with Russia. Iran is going to go with Russia. North Korea is going to go with Russia. So these are nations that are going to collaborate or ally, and these are nations that already have nuke. All right? So then, the U.S. want to strengthen, okay, her military might, her nuclear might. So she is now about to open an all-age power plant that they left long time, that was never foreshowing. They're just about to spend another $1 billion to open it, because this is where now the uranium from Liberia, the iron ore from Liberia will be going in order to manufacture their weapon and their weaponry and whatsoever they want. So as we speak right now, U.S. is preparing for World War III through Liberia resources, because it have been given back to them and they are about to open this power plant. So that is the war that is going on. So that's where, we are heading to. So that's why they were against we are government, not because we was doing a bad thing, not because they love the Liberian people, that they wanted to come to fight for Liberian people to remove we are to put a good government in power. The West does not want any good government, any good governance in Africa, because good governance in Africa means a threat to their hegemony, a threat for them looting the resources of Africa. Now, is Abraham Traore not a good government or not a good president? He is, absolutely. But why? They see him as a threat. They don't like him. Why would they want to like, or how do you call it, Paul Biya of Cameroon? He is now 91 years old, and as we speak currently, Paul Biya does not even live in Cameroon. He lives in Sweden. There where he lived, and he's taking treatment there. And in fact, he's 91 years old. And 2025, Cameroon is going to election, and he's saying he's going to contest. He's not in the country. He's out of the country. In fact, he been living out of the country. All right, he been living out of the country. 91 years old. But he's saying he's going to contest, and he's still the president of Cameroon, and he's living out of the country. He's been there for months, going to years now. All right, but he's the president, and he said he's going to contest. 91 years old. So these people, they don't want any good governance or any good president in Africa. That is why any good government or good government that come in Africa, they fight hard to remove you, because they feel that you are going to elevate your people. And if any nation, for that matter, that does not want to see African people be elevated, that nation is an enemy to Africa, and we should treat that nation as an enemy. That's it.
Absolutely. No, I unite with that. And again, I think this is a important story. I shared. I think I need to share this as well. The story to the UAE and their competition with China over Africa's resources. But there's other stories that we can follow. That's really looking to the UAE's involvement throughout Africa, but all of these foreign powers, right? And it's only a continuation of what took place centuries ago with colonialism and slavery. This is the legacy of colonialism and slavery that we have to undo, and this is why these foreign nations are able to come into Africa and to exploit it the way that it does. It's because of how we've been like balkanized through European colonialism, this division that had existed. And just to be clear, like there wasn't this a unified Africa prior to European colonialism, but it was a sovereign Africa. Like that need to have a unified Africa against enemies, that didn't exist. That those conditions didn't exist at the time. But Africans did come together and trade uh, where it was necessary, right? And they did come together and create quote unquote empires, or these superstructures when it was necessary to defend themselves from enemies, or to better facilitate trade and so forth, to develop their economy. So there were those things that were in place. But now we're dealing the conditions of the conditions are European imperial, right? With the alliance of other foreign nations, whether Asia or Eastern Europe, uh, or even aligning themselves with corrupt leaders in the Americas and in Africa, right? Uh, but that is the conditions we're under now, and it's going to take a unified Africa and African people, right, to come together to combat this, to counterbalance this oppression and exploitation. This is why Pan-Africanism or African internationalism is a threat to the international political economy, to dominate it. It's a threat to we come together anytime we come together, especially with revolution politics, right? So let's just jump into the next story. Well, no, I'm sorry. We're gonna get into the book. We're gonna get into the book. I did share the link in the chat, which I can reach as well. But we're reading Global Politics in 21st Century, a Pan-African Perspective. Uh, we're going to start from chapter 2. We're not going to go through the whole chapter, but it's up to you guys to keep up with us. We're going to move into chapter 3 next time we get together. So you guys definitely, I think this is a book worth reading on, and we're going to continue to bring that information. So I'm share that, and then I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, these first few chapters though, Nigeria and South Africa, I think it's fitting just because of the relationship that they have and where they stand, um, as far as their um, their place in the global political economy. And so these are like the two African powerhouses, uh, which I think needs to be deepened as well, because yeah, they're representing powerhouses in Africa, but they're still tied to the global economy, which I would argue needs to be dismantled. It needs to be destroyed, because at the same time as it brings wealth to nations and to individuals, it creates poverty. It Acts of genocide are instigated, are and motivated by capitalist expansion. So these are things that come with uh, globalism. So I'll start with this quote: "In unity, we lost nothing but our economic chains. Indeed, in unity, we gain many things, including economic independence and the welfare of our entire peoples. However, in division, we will lose many things and gain nothing but neocolonialism, permanent economic bondage, and mutually destructive hostilities among ourselves. Let us therefore remain united and let us do so resolutely, faithfully, and unflinchingly. Chief Obafemi Owolowo, Owalowo, if I pronounced that last name correctly, but that's a powerful quote. We can come back to that too, but I'm gonna get right into it. But I hope y'all let that quote sink in. Right? So introduction: the end of apartheid saw the end of the implacable hostility between successive Nigerian governments and the minority regime in South Africa. Many saw this as the beginning of a rivalry for the leadership of the African continent between Nigeria and a free South Africa. Headline in a Nigerian newspaper in 1994 screamed, quote, "Nigeria loses clout to South Africa," close quote. The article went on to state that this in Nigeria has shifted the respect of the international community from Nigeria to South Africa. The issue of permanent seat for Africa in the United Nations Security Council, which is of much interest by the Africans, has particularly caught the imagination of the proponents of the Nigeria-South Africa rivalry. The many years of political crises and military rule in Nigeria provided an opportunity for comparisons of the transition program of the two countries, with Nigeria come out worse off. Nigeria loses clout to South Africa. The collapse of apartheid in the South Africa on the international as a major power in Africa and challenges that seriously affected Nigeria's policy and position in the African continent. With apartheid going in the entire African continent liberated, quote, put that in quotes, liberated from the vestiges of colonialism, the only major issue that gave coherence to Nigeria's policies had been removed. Even the African Union, AU, formerly the Organization of African Unity, OAU, which was a major vehicle of Nigeria's African policy until the mid-1990s, seems to have lost its relevance, at least temporarily. In the process of charting a new African policy in post-apartheid South Africa, it was inevitable that Nigeria would at some point confront the new South Africa as a rival for continental leadership. It did not take long for the rivalry to start. The Abacha military government stated the twin struggle between the two giants beginning in 1995. The opportunity came in 1995 as South Africa attempted to play a leading role in the resolution of the Nigerian crisis in 1995. General Abacha's violation of human rights of the Nigerian peoples, the killing of the 9 Ogoni leaders, the detention of thousands of political prisoners without trials, and the assassinations of political opponents intensified the crisis. Initially, General Abacha seemed ready to accept South Africa's intervention, which, unlike that attempted by the Western powers, was based on dialogue and mutual respect. President Mandela's emissaries to General Abacha's first Archbishop Desmond Tutu and later the former South African vice president, later became president in 1999 to 2009, Thabo Mbeki, received assurances of leniency for the detained political activists, while the attempts of others had failed. However, at that stage, strain could be observed in the relations between the two countries due to South Africa's open door policy toward the opponents of the Abacha regime, especially the Nigerian pro-democracy groups. Relations deteriorated to their lowest point after the executions of the 9 Ogoni leaders on November 10, 1995. President Mandela considered the executions a personal blow since he had received assurances from General Abacha that the 9 Ogoni civil rights activists would not be executed. Mandela's decision to become the African arm of the international opposition to General Abacha, while other African leaders remained silent and muted their reactions to the executions, led to accusations by General Abacha that South Africa was a stooge of Western powers, and Mandela was not a true African nationalist. In response, Mandela described the Abacha regime as an illegitimate, barbaric, arrogant military dictatorship, which has murdered activists using a kangaroo court and false evidence. Nigeria withdrew from the 1996 African Cup of the Nations, hosted by South Africa. The excuse was that South African authorities had refused to guarantee the safety and security of the Nigerian delegation. Steps were initiated to restore normal relations between the two countries, but were not as they had been in November 1995 executions of the non-Ogoni activists. Relations cooled into General Abacha's death in June 1998. I want to stop there just to give us a chance to reflect. Um, that was some good history and context. I'm going to say first. I want to go back to the quote. And I think this is good, man, to get this history as well, because it gives us a better understanding of Nigeria and South Africa relations. We can kind of like point to some of those contradictions then that has led to the state of both of these nations right now, internally and externally, right? Just a little glimpse. It also kind of, when I think of even BRICS, right? And BRICS, which was which didn't have an African nation a part of BRICS, right? But they go to South Africa and to get South Africa to be that representative African nation, rather than Nigeria, right? Or any other nation, but it's kind of like Nigeria and South Africa, again, being those two African powerhouses. And they go to South Africa as opposed to Nigeria to be that African nation, because BRICS is what? Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And we don't have to go into the history of BRICS, but I think it's interesting. But I think this too kind of like speaks and gives us a an idea of why maybe BRICS made the decision that they had made to go to South Africa. Going to this quote, in unity, we lost nothing but our economic chains. Indeed, in unity, we gained many things, including economic independence and the welfare of our entire peoples. However, in division, we would lose many things and gain nothing but neo-colonialism, permanent economic bondage, and mutually destructive hostilities among ourselves. Let us therefore remain united, and let us do so resolutely, faithfully, and unflinchingly. We have not did a great job in creating that unity, that economic unity, right? I think the neo-colonialism part that is being spoken about, the neo-colonialism rides in the disunity when African nations compete with each other, as Nigeria and South Africa is doing right here, right? That what was just laid out here, competing with each other instead of unifying against the economic policies of the West. African nations today, throughout, right, where these foreign nations we just talked about in the stories with the UAE and China, and their their competition over African resources and land. But you have UAE purchasing 1/5 of Zimbabwe's land, owning close to 20% of Zimbabwe's land. This is neo-colonialism, and it happens because African nations are with each other to be a part of this global economy that's dominated by Europeans. There's benefits for a minority of Africans to be a part of this economy. There's no lie in that. You know what I'm saying? There is truth to that. For a minority of Africans, they can benefit, and it's that minority that is turning their backs on the masses of Africans to let foreign nations come in and dominate, because that way they can get a piece of that pie. And this whole trickle down thing, which is eventually supposed to happen, never happens. It never happens. But go ahead, Frank. I know I was reading. I wanted to at least touch on that. But I think it's important that we do take that, away from that quote, the importance of the unity, not just on the continent, but Africans in general, beginning to build economic relations with each other so we can get away from this dependence on foreign powers.
Let me say this. One of the reasons why, right, Africa have drifting away from the intensity of fighting for African freedom during Kwame Nkrumah days, or let's say during the 60s, right? One of the reasons why Africans have drifted away from that concept of the 1960 movement is because of the colonial educational system within our educational system. And they were able, right, to infiltrate that into the educational system of the African masses. And gradually, we become gradually and slowly to drift away from the movement, from the ideology of the 1960 African movement for freedom. Now, what am I saying this? If we go back to Nkrumah quote, where he said, the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless all Africa is free, unless all African nations are free, right? That verse, that tone is not in Ghana president today. Look at, for example, Nana Akufo-Addo, who is from a noble nation of freedom, a noble nation of independence, who want to see it, the entire nations that once promise and says, although we have independence, but it is meaningless if we see the rest of Africa not independent. That means Ghana is not independent. If Togo is not independent, Ghana is not independent. If Togo is not free, Ghana is not free. If Benin, Nigeria, Liberia, Ivory Coast, and the list go on, if those nations are not free, Ghana is not free, because Ghana is in Africa, Nigeria, Mali, the rest of the nation, they are in Africa. So if they are not free, we are not free. Because why? We will be overthrown at any time. But look at Nana Akufo-Addo today. He does not believe in the freedom of Africa. He does not believe in the liberation of Africa. He does not even believe in the ideology of Kwame Nkrumah. He do not. Because if he did, or if he did believe in it, he was never ever going to go against Abraham Tuwari. What he should have done was to understand the perspective where Abraham Tuwari was coming from, where Assimi Goita, the Shahid nation, where are they coming from? He should have understand how they call it, gotten their perspective. The same way Nkrumah got the rest of the African nation perspective and said, no, listen, we are fighting the same thing these people are fighting. So if we are not free, if these nations are not free, we are not free. Now, what am I also saying this? I'm saying this because AU failed from the day that they did not reconcile in 1963 in Liberia, and then went in Addis Ababa in 1963, and then infused colonial ideology into the AU or the OAU. What do I mean by that? How are you going to say we are Organization of African Unity, but then in the same memo, in the same doctrine, you say no African nation shall interfere in the political and economic affair of other African nations, knowing very well at that time period, Africa never had any political independence. Africa never had any economic independence. In fact, at that time, we were fighting for political independence. We were fighting for economic independence. We were fighting for identity. We were fighting to claim our land at that time. And then, at that time, you wrote and say, no African nation shall interfere in any of our African nation, whether politically or economically. Then, what did you find? What did you find the OAU? If you say Ghana will not talk about Liberia, Liberia will not go to Ghana for them to meet to discuss about what need to progress Africa, what they should do to bring intercontinental trade. When the European nation were getting their NATO or putting a nation or their EU together, they did not say Germany will not interfere, this will not do this, this will not do this. But the European nation, the colonizer, took that and gave that to the Moravia group, and the Moravia group took it to Addis Ababa, and they put that into the OAU, and today that is still manifesting. So what am I saying? I'm saying this because Thomas Mbeki, the former South African president, recently, as I listened to him, what did he say? AU is a failure, and AU has failed, and AU has done nothing on the African continent. And in fact, it will be very hard for AU to survive, because at the end of the day, even though or although the Sahel leader, okay, they have left ECOWAS, but they are still part of AU. Now, if AU did believe the ideology of ECOWAS to go invade Niger, right, and this leader are still part of AU, and they are coming to AU meeting, don't you think they are coming with different agenda? Because at the end of the day, all these ECOWAS leaders, okay, who wanted to take war to the Sahel region, they are part of AU, so they are coming with different agenda. How can AU solve the African problem when these colonialist institutions, all right, or this colonialist nation who are part of ECOWAS, who wanted to go kill Africans, right? They are going to AU summit. Do you think they are going there with an agenda like the Sahel region? No, the Sahel leaders are coming with their agenda. The ECOWAS, failure ECOWAS leaders like Tinubu, Nana Akufo-Addo, okay, Alassane, these people, they are going there with different agenda. Are they going to collaborate to fight for unity, to fight for Africa? No! And that's what Thomas Mbeki was talking about. The failure of the AU to agree to Europe and US to go and win wars on the Sahel region, to go and kill these people, that have also manifested negatively on AU, and AU will not survive. What is going on? That is to say again, African leaders, you have failed the African continent massively.
Continue to do so. We need new leaders. We need new world leaders. You know, I definitely agree with that. You know, the other side of this too, when we have, as we've been discussing, as far as just you know, Nigeria and South Africa, who had a history of supporting each other, whether we're talking about apartheid, you know, colonialism, just supporting each other's struggle, you know, for independence, and how that has changed. As far as just this competition is concerned, the other part of that is it affects the population, the Nigerian population, the South African population, and how they view each other as well. And this is how we begin to have this division among Africans who are from other nations or maybe represent different ethnic groups. Is because the leaders fuel this division, right? And I just want to, you know, really quick, just to go, you know, go to this story. I'm not going to go into it deeply, but I don't know if y'all heard about the model. Well, I don't know if she was a model, but she was going she entered the Miss South Africa beauty pageant. But there were questions. You could see Chidima Adeshina, who father is Nigerian and mother Mozambique, but she entered South Africa before the sister was born. And the sister was born in South Africa, as far as I know. But there were questions about, you know, is she South African? There was investigation into her background, and that's how some of this information even came out, as far as her mother, I guess, illegally entered South Africa, didn't have the papers, that sort of thing, right? But this sister was born in South Africa, and but questions and online bullying and abuse took place, and so she uh, decided that she would enter the beauty pageant in South Africa. She got an invitation from Nigeria, who was just like, "Hey, your father's Nigerian, and they're not giving you any love and support there. Hey, come and enter the Nigerian, beauty pageant," which she is going to do. But it's sad that we get to this point, but we know like this xenophobia, which is existing in Africa as well against other Africans. This is something that we have to begin to acknowledge and talk about. And this is why this movement of Pan-Africanism and internationalism, African internationalism, is so important, because it's a way that we can merge our differences, and elevate beyond these, transcend these differences and for a common struggle and a common good. So that's sort of like what I want to leave with, is just let's work together. Let's find a way to work together. We're part of the African nation, and within the African nations, you have people who are Nigerian, you have people who are South African, you have people who are Jamaican, Haiti, you have Africans that's in America. We're all of the African nation. So yes, you can be Nigerian, but what kind, African, African or Igbo, you can go even deeper, right? Like these different layers of identities that we have. But we need to come and have a united front when it comes to the global movement to oppress and exploit African people. There's only one way around that, and that's through unification. So let's come together. Let's be proud to be African, and let's continue to battle against or overturn these contradictions that exist because of the legacy of colonialism and slavery. And until leaders that acknowledge that and work that, we're going to continue to have our lands brought up by foreign power, which this is like gentrification in a sense, right? Form of it, have ethnic cleansing, these things that's going to happen in the name of progress. All of these things that take place, it takes place in the name of quote unquote progress. Conversations about, is globalism, does the benefits outweigh the negative consequences of globalism, right? The benefits out, right? These are conversations that had. But if polling, and if you poll the Africans that are enslaved and colonized, the Africans that are exploited, you do that same poll, it will be an overwhelming no, because they are the victims of it, so that's conversations that we got to keep. I'm appreciating everybody for joining. Did you have any last comments?
Let me just add to the story you're saying, right? You see, the thing about it, let's do this now. And the scenario I'm going to give, even before getting to South Africa, right? I'm not trying to compare what the Europeans do versus Africa should do the same thing. But let's be realistic here. In the US here, when do they call, let me be specific here, okay? Let me just be specific. But when do they call African American American? Like, they don't have to attach the phrase Africans. They go strictly American. The only time they do that is when they are representing the US, whether in the Olympic or in any war event. You never hear say the African American is about to represent America, or the last person is this African American. They always says the Americans are about to play, or another American just won't go medal. They don't say another African American won't go medal. What they're trying to do here is, as long as you are doing the right thing, because the reality here is, it's not about you, but it's about what you are doing that is giving good image to the US on the world stage. What you are doing to make the US number one, because first of all, they will put all the gold medal, or the United States team have won 20, 25 gold medal, and then they do all those comparisons. It is because you are putting the US on the map, looking at them as a great nation. So at that point, they are calling you US citizens. They never ever attach African American. At that time, you are not African. You have nothing to do with Africa. They are not going to give you that identity. Now, but if you're on a world stage and you do something negative, they are not going to say the US, they're going to say the African American. Now they're going to attach the Africans to you because it is negative. That's the time they attach African. My point here is, once it is good, whether even it is the US or even Europe, we saw that in France, when this African dude or this African guy went and claimed a war and saved a baby. At that point, they made him a French because he have done a great thing. Only French people can do great. Only European people can do great. If it is negative, then you stay with Africa. You stay being African. At that point, all the time he been in France, they never made him citizen. But the moment he claimed the war as a Spider-Man and saved a baby, boom, automatically they made him a French citizen. He became a French. Now, my point that I want to make here is, that is not to say in Africa we should do the same thing when Africans are in your country or in other African country. If they are doing the right thing, we should take them to be that colonial name, like, oh, this is Liberian. Okay, because it is still colonial name, no matter how you want to do it. Nigeria is a colonial name, Ghana is a colonial name, Liberia, Africa, they are all colonial name. No matter how you want to do it, take it. Now, as long as we have those attachments, this right, we are still protecting the colonial name. And that is what exactly they did to this lady. This lady was not doing any kind of bad thing. In fact, she was representing South Africa, right, as a beautiful woman. But again, you see the self-hate because she's so pretty, because she's so beautiful, right? They win the wrong propaganda against this lady, talk against her, say she's not a South African. And she's not a South African, why was she born? She was born there. Absolutely. She was born there. That made her a South African. All right? Now, but even that's not the point. But they went against her and removed her. But what did they do? Self-hate. They removed an African queen and then went and, in fact, they said she was foreigner, right? Now, they put a foreigner and made her Miss South Africa. Went and put an alien. You took out the original owner of the land, of the soil. You said she was foreigner. And then went and take an alien, a foreigner. In a sense, her mom is not even from Africa. Her mom was now from South Africa or any African nation. The father was not from South Africa or from any African nation. They were all alien that went to Africa. And you took that person and you made this person Miss of Africa. And then when I went to the comment, they start saying that was a referral person. Yeah, South Africa is now a place for everybody. How can that be the place for everybody when you went against someone who is from the soil? He says she's not South African. The mother is African, the father is African. But the person you put there, both mother, their great-great-grand, when you trace it, they were not African. They are not African. And she's not African. But you say, this person is African. Do you see the self-hate?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. Nah, I appreciate that. Appreciate everybody tapping in. We're going to, continue this conversation when we come back. We usually do this podcast book club on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Definitely subscribe to the channel if this is your first time here. And like and share, and we want to continue to build the platform. We will, continue to build the platform. We're on the right side of history. We know we're having the right conversations right here when we charge colonialism, and they're just going, we just going to keep deepening. It's going to get better, and more people are going to be. I see that. Uh, again, just appreciate you all. So until next time, man, y'all, fight for Huru, stay black, fight for black power, no matter where you are. And remember, one people, as Garvey said, one aim, one destiny. Until next time, y'all. All right, peace.